So we'll start off first with Jim Brogna. Jim, can you introduce yourself, a little bit about your organization?
Yes, good morning, and thank you for including me on behalf of Allied Services Integrated Health System. I'm the Vice President for Strategic Partnership Development. I've worked at Allied Services for 22 years now. Although my role is somewhat diverse, I'm not a clinician. I represent all of our clinical leaders, our medical management, our home care services, our skilled nursing and personal care, and really about 3,500 employees in this region, compassionate and caring people. My involvement is multifaceted because it includes everything from marketing and communications to fundraising, and certainly engaging the public for the services that we provide and helping people through Allied Services and also through other community partnerships. So that's a brief summary on me. Without going too much into detail, I'm glad to be a part of the panel today on behalf of all of our healthcare heroes.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Joe Fasula.
I'm Joe Fasula. I'm co-owner and vice president of Garrity's Supermarket. We're a family-owned supermarket chain here in northeastern Pennsylvania, based in Scranton. We have about 1,100 employees. My responsibilities are pretty much everything from top to bottom: marketing, administration, operations, and of course with the help of our 1,100 team members. I think you're muted, Jim.
I'm breaking the rules already. Next, we'll go to Stephanie Grabowski.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Grabowski. I'm the Associate Vice President of Emergency and Employee Health at Geisinger. Prior to COVID, one of my responsibilities at Geisinger was leading the highly infectious disease team, which obviously came into play when COVID hit. We've been planning since last January, and I've been helping the health system for the past year manage all COVID operations.
Thanks, Stephanie. Next, we'll go to Carol Kipe.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay. Carol Kipe, Valley Distributing and Storage and CDS Transportation. We're a family-owned and operated warehouse logistics and transportation company. I'm with the company for 23 years, and as the Chief Operating Officer, just had responsibility to just oversee from sales to strategy to daily operation.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you.
Katie Leonard.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Katie Leonard. I'm the president and CEO of Johnson College. We're a two-year technical college right here in Scranton. I've been at the college since 2007 in many different roles and was selected through a search back in 2017. So I've been president and CEO since the beginning of 2018. Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Katie. Amy Leister.
Good morning. Hi, I'm Amy Leister. I'm with the Greater Scranton Chamber of Commerce. Jim, thanks for having me and all the Times-Shamrock group, and I'm pleased to be here with many of my community partners here on the call. Thanks for having us. I'm with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm a vice president. I've been with the Chamber for 22 years, primarily in the Industrial Development Department. My area of focus is the Scranton Plan, which is the economic development marketing arm, as well as Skills in Scranton, which is our workforce development affiliate.
Thanks, Amy. Terry Ohms.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for including me again this year. My name is Terry Ohms, and I'm the executive director of the Institute. I've been with the organization since its inception in 2004, and the Institute is an economic research and social innovation organization that is formed out of a collaborative of 13 higher education institutions in the business community in northeastern Pennsylvania. And our job is to help community leaders make more informed decisions using data and analytics and best practices.
Thanks, Terry. And then Marwan.
Marwan Wacha, Chancellor of Penn State Scranton. I've been with Penn State University since July 1, 2015. We are one of 24 campuses in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. My role is oversight over the entire operations of the campus, making sure that we are fulfilling our mission and strategic goals. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll move on to the questions. The first question will be, what three things have to happen next for your organization or the community to continue its recovery? Amy, do you want to start that one?
I will, thank you. So, Jim, I think what needs to happen from a community standpoint and a Scranton Chamber perspective is that for us to have a successful post-COVID-19 economic recovery, we're going to have to focus in three areas, which is workforce development, which is probably at the top of mind, small business support, and then government affairs items, which will include capital projects and maybe some legislative policy reform.
Great, thank you. Next, Jim, do you want to take that next?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Top three initiatives that consideration for our integrated health system. I think one of the most important things would be increased reimbursement. There's a significant number of people that are receiving care under the Medicaid system, and they are the most vulnerable and elderly in our community, and we care for them, and we care for them very well. But the reality is we need increased reimbursements to provide greater care, more staff, more support for those individuals who make up a huge percentage of our population in this region. Secondarily, and maybe equally, limited liability protection. I'm sure not everyone on this call has that as a top priority, but I will share this. Our long-term care providers, which includes our nursing homes, our personal care homes, and all of our facilities have done everything possible during this pandemic to protect these elderly and vulnerable in our community. And the reality is that my third point is going to be people. We need more people. We need more healthcare heroes to join them on our teams to continue this prolonged pandemic and this mission that we have going forward. Limited liability protection for those that have followed all the procedures, all the elements that were recommended by the CDC, by the Department of Health, by CMS, and we believe our entities have done so. But without limited liability protection, there's continual fear of lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits, lost revenue, unnecessary lost revenue, and then also a continued fear for people to even go into this level of employment because they will be scrutinized and obviously our organization may be sued. So my final point is people. We have seen it before the pandemic, and the pandemic just exacerbated the need for more compassionate caregivers in long-term care settings, in homes across the region, in services such as human services, behavioral health, caregivers in homes across the region. This is not a natural for most of the young and up-and-coming students and also those seeking future healthcare professions. And we need to reinvest in those students and also create the awareness for these opportunities so we can continue this mission in providing care in these settings. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Katie, do you want to go next and provide some thoughts on this?
Sure. So I will say definitely a skilled workforce for the careers that for us at Johnson College have always been essential. This is not just healthcare, but also everything from manufacturing to logistics to transportation to construction. So we've always known how essential they are to our economy, even before the pandemic. And I believe now it seems that there's an increased awareness of this. When you think about it, this is also Career and Technical Education Month. And I just read a statistic from the Association for Career and Tech Ed that over 30 million workers are going to be needed over the next decade to fulfill some of the infrastructure positions alone. So again, when you think about construction and logistics and transportation, we definitely need the right people with the right skills, fulfilling the right roles, and helping fulfill those essential careers that we're working so hard to create here in Northeastern PA.
Thanks, Katie. Joe, you want to take this one next?
Sure. So, when you walk down the aisles in the supermarket or a hardware store, or you have a part that breaks on your appliance and you need to order it, and you find out that there's these enormous delays in getting these products to market. People need to start getting frustrated with the fact that there is a lack of labor force out there. And a lot of that right now is coming from the policies that our government has put in place that is encouraging people not to work. There are a lot of people that are out of work, but I have yet to talk to a single employer who is, maybe not in the hospitality industry, who has been hurt by the pandemic, but any business that is open and operating is in desperate need of people. And if we want to turn this whole thing around, we need to get people back to work. It's incredibly frustrating how much it hampers my industry. There are multiple times a week where I'm having conversations with my operations people, and we're being held back by our inability to fill positions, and we're paying more than ever before. And that goes throughout our entire supply chain, whether it's distribution facilities, trucking, the farms. Everybody desperately needs help, and we need to get people back to work. And then, the second thing it kind of relates as, I think our region needs to work hard to market itself to areas outside of here to try to get more workers into here from other places. We need to continue to espouse the great things about this area and how great it is to raise a family and the values that we have here and the infrastructure that we have here. It's a really terrific place to live, and we need to make sure everybody knows it's a really terrific place to work too. And then finally, I'm very fearful of where the local, state, and federal governments are going to be heading with taxes. I'm very concerned about what that's going to do to businesses. Anything where you look at, New York State and New Jersey and how out of control they are with their taxes, and they're just driving people and businesses out of their states. I just want to make sure that, the city of Scranton, that the county and that the state don't make that same mistake here in Pennsylvania. I'm already hearing that all these different budgets are going to be calling for tax increases. The city of Scranton won their court case to be able to raise taxes, at will. I think we need to be very careful about not driving residents and businesses out of these towns and cities.
Joe.
I hope I wasn't muted on that.
No, you're good. Thanks, Joe. Terry, you want to jump in here?
Sure. Thank you. So the first thing, if we're going to be serious about talking about a sustained economic recovery, is that obviously a vaccine has to be widely available. Then we get to return to some degree of normalcy. But what people need to start thinking about now is normal pre-COVID is not going to be normal post-COVID. So organizations of all different types need to continue to innovate processes and protocols and really look at how they market and communicate what they have to offer. But the three biggest areas are actually problems that manifested itself pre-COVID, and they were exacerbated by COVID. And if we don't do something about it, we're not going to have a sustained economic recovery. And the first is regionalism. Our region is an economic region, yet it operates in extremely fragmented fashion. Some of it is systemic because of the way the municipal code is written and governments operate, but we see it in the nonprofit sectors. We see it in all different communities. So we need to look at how we can work better collectively to solve problems and challenges while enhancing many of the assets, like Joe talked about, doing better in marketing the wonderful things that are happening here. Workforce has been a huge issue because the shortage started before COVID. It's going to continue for the next 2 decades just because of the population shifts. And so we not only need to make sure that we could retain a workforce, but that there's a fit with the types of businesses we have, so avoiding that structural unemployment, but also work to attract a workforce. So we talked about attracting businesses for the past several decades. Now we have to look at attracting workforce, but we also have to deal with the barriers. There are childcare barriers, there are transportation barriers, elder and family care barriers. And then some people are still going to be fearful of going back into the workforce or the workplace, even after vaccinating from COVID. And so we have to be cognizant of how we can work again collectively to mitigate those barriers to get people back to work. And the other area is poverty. Over the past decade, we've seen an increase in poverty levels as the middle class in our region hollows out, and we've become more of a have and a have not. And if we don't address root causes of poverty and lifting people out of poverty, then we are going to continually need to use other resources to support individuals. And that essentially brings everybody and everything down and affects the economy as a whole. So those are the three areas I think are the most prominent that we need to deal with moving forward.
Thanks, Terry. Stephanie, would you like to go next?
Actually, I'd love to, because I think I'm going to build off some of the things Terry just talked about. There are so many things that I think we are looking forward to working on in the next year after COVID. But the three things I'll focus on is, obviously, first, there have been services that have been halted for our community and our patients and things like that, or delayed, either by decisions that we had to make, decisions the state made, or decisions that our patients have individually made because they didn't feel comfortable. We've pivoted, obviously, not just at Geisinger, but throughout healthcare, utilizing telehealth services. So I think that that's an area that we will continue to enhance. It's always been available. I think we'll continue to offer that to our employees or to our patients to ensure that they get care when they want care. I think our employee health well-being. So we've obviously healthcare, many other entities have been really stressed this past year, and we're seeing that in our employees. So it's something that we're focused on for the future, making sure mental well-being, physical well-being, workforce health, turnover, to make sure that we don't have a lot of turnover after this. We're recruiting appropriately. And then the last thing I would say is, as you talked about, Terry, underserved populations is vaccination. We need to make sure that we get the vaccine out there to all populations, those that are easily able to schedule online, and also maybe, hopefully down the line, when we have other vaccine options, is to get out into communities to ensure that we're getting that protection out to our communities. So really, telehealth, employee well-being, and continued population health and community health.
Thanks, Stephanie. Marwan, would you like to go next?
Yes, I think a couple of colleagues addressed that. Without controlling the pandemic, we are forced to do practices that are not part of why we exist. So controlling the pandemic, educating the public to take it seriously, because we can do our part on our campuses, for example, but if they go out for celebrating football or something, and then masks are dropped, then all goes down the drain. So the vaccination, controlling the pandemic is essential for us to our return to recovery. The other thing is this, and I think also that was mentioned, making sure that our students are on track for graduation, because we are a production unit of skilled and trained workers. So to overcome the pandemic and its impact on how we deliver learning and training has forced us to change how we practice. So, but one thing that should not change, and that is commitment to making sure that students graduate on time. The other piece is the discovery of how vulnerable we all are, individuals, families, institutions, which is directly connected again to the pandemic. So the control of the pandemic is essential. Well, what that means to us is to go out of our ways to help individuals, small businesses to get back on track. For example, we provide free technical support to entrepreneurs so that hopefully they will be able to launch their businesses and contribute to the economic growth of the region. But I cannot emphasize enough the control of the pandemic, because it has forced us to do things differently that we don't really want, but there were some side positive effects that I think we'll address later.
Thanks, Marwan. Carol, you want to take the last crack at this, and then we'll throw it out to the group for additional commentary?
Okay, sure, very good. So, like our biggest challenge has been the ability to hire, tied to the workforce development. And as you know, Jim and Joe both said, kids don't get out of school thinking about I'm going to go into logistics and operate a forklift or a CDL. So I think on the workforce development side, it's more dollars, like scholarship dollars, that outreach and educate these high school graduates on skills such as, you know, the frontline skills or the back office skills associated with logistics. And I'll also tag on to Jim, as long as we all have aging family, even in the healthcare, CNAs, home health aides, they're just not available. So, you know, those have been a big impact, but we have not been able to hire. That it was before COVID, and it absolutely escalated during COVID. And it affects businesses like Joe Fasula's, because during the COVID, people stayed home. So the grocery items became much more popular. So, and as a single example, is we handle retail flour. So our volume on inbound boxcars doubled, our volume going out to your grocery stores tripled, and you can't hire people. So, you know, you stretch your current workforce that's dealing with a lot of fear in an unknown environment. And being able to hire more people that have the skills would definitely provide more opportunity and alleviate the stress. But, and the schools need to reopen. They need to reopen safely because it impacts the childcare. And we have employees that either can't work or they have to share with their spouse, taking time off to be home with the children. And of course, I'm sure that impacts people's ability to come back into the workforce. And the vaccinations. We need outreach on it. You know, our industry is in the 1C phase. So as an industry, we're not eligible. But when they opened up the eligibility based on your personal situation, what we find is we actually have employees that have worked through this entire COVID that are not going to take advantage of that vaccine. They don't feel comfortable with the risks. So we're trying as a company to do an outreach and an education. But I think if it was on a broader base, it would help get more participation and, you know, and help protect our fellow employees. So those are my top three.
Thanks, Carol. I'll throw it out to the panel for anybody who'd like to provide some additional thoughts or commentary on something else that someone mentioned. Let's do that. If you guys could just unmute yourselves and then go around as you see.
Yeah, I would like to touch on one thing that addresses all three of the topics I mentioned, which is workforce poverty and regionalism. And it has to do with systemic and structural issues in K through 12. We all know that public schools are funded on property taxes. And COVID has really pointed out the disparities and the inequities that exist in this current system. So right now, if you live in a zip code and attend a school where there are lower property values, there's lower taxes, there's less resources, those children are not getting as much benefit out of education as those that live in the wealthier districts. Some of them don't have internet because broadband isn't available, and some of them just can't afford that. So if we're going to continue to use property taxes as a basis to fund public schools, we need to find ways to make it more equitable. And that doesn't necessarily mean throwing more money at the problem by trying to find another revenue source to backfill school districts. You're putting a Band-Aid on the problem. You're not addressing the structural issues. And essentially we need to look at, does Lackawanna and Luzerne County need 23 school districts between the two counties? Or should we look at county level districts and property tax sharing to make it more equitable so the quality of your education is not based on your zip code? That's going to have an outcome on workforce in the future. And it's certainly, if we don't address it, just promotes ongoing poverty because we're not addressing issues at the root cause. And we're not working together to solve problems that affect all of us. I mean, everybody here has a regional business. You're not locked into one particular community. And then Carol, I'd like to tell you that we are putting some resources together. We did get a grant and we will be putting out materials in all of the school districts to go to parents about opportunities for occupations earning family sustaining wages in a whole host of industries in the region. And it talks about hard skills, soft skills, and education requirements to get those jobs.
Terry, that's fantastic, because I think you'd find a lot of us would be willing to co-op with those kids once they started the programs.
So if I could jump in for a minute, I'd like to build off of what pretty much everyone said on the group is the workforce cry. We are hearing from our business community that all of our employees are looking to fill jobs. The cry is real and the need is now. So adding to what Joe was saying, it is now. I think some of the things we need to look at, and it was mentioned, policy. We need to start looking at our federal and state workforce training funds and seeing what we can do to loosen the regulations and the income level restrictions. There are a lot of people that are looking for positions or will be looking for positions upcoming that will need upskill training. And some of the programs do not allow for them to qualify for some of these programs due to restricted income levels. Also on the employer side, we need to look at the workforce training dollar access and the process to do that. Many of the employers don't have time to fill out the applications and the times needed to be able to access those training dollars. So we need to take a closer look at that. Carol and Terry, you talked about K-12 and the education. I couldn't agree more. Through Skills in Scranton, we've been trying to do some of that prior to COVID, making sure that we're building a talent pipeline and that the community knows, the school districts know the positions that are available. I think we need to take a hard look at the 339 curriculum standards and say, what can we do to do more of an impact in there and linking the connection of the business community to the educational community through those standards. And then the last thing I'll say is talent attraction. Joe, you were spot on when you said we need to start marketing our quality of life and outside of the market. The businesses here that are here existing need employees. Economic development is not stopping. We're going to see more businesses, specifically probably on the e-commerce and logistics side, move into the area, which brings a significant amount of employment. And we're going to need to start looking outside of the area to recruit some workforce and some people to relocate to our community for investment and to even entrepreneurism to some extent. And we've done that through our Rediscover Scranton website and a partnership with Discover NEPA, which the Times profiled a couple weeks ago.
I'd like to add something, Jim, if I may. This is Jim Brogna. I think one thing that I want to hopefully reinforce what everybody has said here. There's a disconnect, maybe a little bit, because as recent as yesterday, we heard our state and federal legislators talking about bringing jobs to this area. We need to be able to prepare the students in this community from a very young age about what opportunities are here, both through a college degree and without a college degree. And some of them, many of them, including our healthcare system, are family sustaining jobs, but they're not being exposed at a young enough age. And so when we bring more competitive work, obviously all ships rise. The reality is there's a significant number of jobs. I looked at our roster today, several hundred open positions, and they're not all entry-level unskilled labor. They're a wide mix of opportunities, but most of our kids aren't exposed to these jobs at a young age. You know, we've drilled in as my parents did with me. I'm a first generation to attend college in my immediate family, is that you had to go to college, and it's the most important thing. And I can remember debating with my dad years ago about what was my career goal out of that. I still think a college degree is extraordinarily important with an end goal about what you could do with that degree. If not, there are a significant number of jobs that we have and others in this panel had. So when we hear state and federal officials saying, we have to bring more jobs to this area, let's repurpose that conversation. Certainly, we always want more quality jobs, but let's make sure that we're also helping to support and fill the jobs, whether through education funding or grants for programs that could repurpose workforce to fill the many jobs that we have right now that are in desperate need.
And if I can just add too, Jim, I will say, you know, since I started at the college from 2007 until now, the schools have become a lot more open to information about different types of careers and people coming in and talking about different types of careers. I'll be honest, when I started at the college, there were certain school districts where, you know, whether we mentioned Johnson College and the types of degrees we offer, or just the importance of a skilled workforce in general, there were some school districts that didn't, you know, want Johnson College to even come into the school to talk about career options, degree options. So from that perspective, I will say, in terms of partnership, we've come a long way. And I feel like now and I know a lot of other colleges too, we actually have early, you know, college programs inside many of the school districts. So in our case, some students can get a welding certificate before they even graduate high school. We've had a couple of students do that. Or they can start their degree early in high school while still finishing high school, getting those college credits and come out. And if they decide to continue on at Johnson College, they only have one more year left to go before they get that degree, and they can stack their credentials, whether they get a certificate in high school and then finish at Johnson for that 2-year degree. And then again, they're getting into the workforce that much faster.
So a comment that I wanted to make about healthcare workforce and some implications over the past year is that when the pandemic first hit, and schools closed, as we were just talking about, it certainly impacted, you know, employees that are required to go into the office or into a building, you know, such as healthcare. Geisinger actually very quickly, within a matter of a week or two, pivoted and for the first time offer daycare on site for our employees that didn't have care for their children. You know, the kids that were then virtually learning from home didn't have a parent at home to be able to care for them, especially if they were really elementary aged. So Geisinger did temporarily, for a few months, open up these daycare centers and offered that service to our employees, which I think was just really, really helpful to our employees. And it also allowed our employees to hang in there and not have to choose between their career and staying home with their children. I think that there are other areas, especially in this area, that people have not been so fortunate that they've had to make those decisions to be able to stay home. And you know, I think the other issue that healthcare specifically was really tackled was having someone else take care of their children when they're working in a healthcare agency, possibly exposed to the virus, bringing that threat home to their families, not wanting their children to be watched by grandparents or other family members, and things like that. So certainly something we've worked through. The daycare is not a long-term solution for us. So what we're working with our employees now is to make sure that they have future plans. If something like this was to ever happen again, God forbid, they have a backup plan. If schools go virtual, what do they do for childcare for their children or continued learning?
Any other thoughts on this one before we move on to the next?
We did take a look at the ability to offer childcare on site, but you probably have to be a certain size business or maybe self-insured to take on that responsibility and liability. So insurance, risk management, and legal wise, we were just cautioned against it. But as Stephanie says, a lot of our employees don't even use formal childcare. It was elderly family members, and they didn't want to expose them, which we could all agree with. So of course, you know, we had to work with them to, you know, watch their own kids and not come to work.
Thank you, everybody, for your thoughts on that topic. We'll move on to the next one. I think this kind of, you know, dovetails right into what everybody touched on a little bit, but we can get into a lot more, which is, you know, obviously the pandemic, you know, sent many workers home and many workers to work remotely. You know, others continued to stay in the workforce because they were essential in their jobs and their roles didn't allow them to work remotely. So what is the future for your employees specifically in your organization, or for workers in general, either whether it's your organization or you know, your company, or also in associated businesses that connect directly with yours? You know, obviously it's a pretty wide range of what's affected everybody on the panel here. So it'd be really interesting to hear how you guys all think about this topic and what does the future look like. Katie, do you want to take this one first?
Sure. So I think for us, when we look at our employees and our, you know, serving our students, I think for us, it's two key things. It's continue to create flexible options, whether it's for employees. Again, we touched upon childcare here. Looking at our employees, some are on campus 3 days a week now, some are at home working from home 2 days a week, and then we flip flop. So just kind of keeping that as a practice. I think that's sort of a future for our employees, and just knowing that they can still take care of our students in whichever environment that they're working in. And I think for faculty and students, it's also that increased flexibility and continued innovation. I think at the start of the pandemic, I got a lot of questions. Well, how on earth is a technical college going to function when you can't have hands-on education? And our faculty and staff didn't miss a beat, and the students were game for anything. They didn't want to be at home. They didn't want to be behind a computer. They still wanted to get their hands-on in. So we had a responsibility to figure out a way to do that. So many of our faculty developed lab kits for our students and delivered them to students safely. They live streamed many of their hands-on labs once the students had those kits. And because all of our majors are connected to some type of essential businesses, many of our students went out on service calls. So again, campus was closed, but we had students completing lab hours out with some faculty at essential businesses, and then also completing their lab hours at some of these businesses as well. So I think, for us, the future, we were already going in a lot of these directions. So in a lot of ways that, we used the pandemic to our advantage so we could speed up some of these ideas and put them into practice. So for us, we're going to continue, much of that, because it's benefiting the community, it's benefiting employers, and it's definitely benefiting students as well.
Great. Thanks, Katie. Joe, you want to take this one?
Yeah, so, we were in a bit of a unique situation. I mean, obviously the healthcare workers continued to work, but the grocery workers had to keep going to work. For us, life changed in terms of the environment we were in. The physical barriers went up, the masks went on, the buffets and everything, salad bars closed temporarily. But there really is no option for us to work from home. The shelves don't come home with us. We can't stock them at home. It'd be odd for a butcher to take the meat home, cut it, and bring it back to work the next day. So for us, working on site is the only option. So there really wasn't a huge change for us. So many people I would talk to, especially after the initial lockdown, would say, "Oh God, it's so great to be out," or "Oh boy, I can't wait to get back to work." And for us, it never really changed. We just kept going to work.
Thanks, Joe. Amy, you want to jump in on this?
Sure. So I think that our community have shown that we're resilient and we're adaptable. And as we move forward, the work-life balance, as we've been talking about, is going to really continue to be in that spotlight for quite some time. I know here at the Chamber, technology has been at the forefront of that adaptability here as we went into a COVID-19 shutdown. I don't think that we as a community or as an organization really know the extent of what technology can do for us. And we found that out, that we can utilize that and continue to work and move forward with that. The work-life balance is going to be really important. Can you stay home and be efficient working remotely? And in some cases, are you improving efficiency within your organization? And in some cases that is happening. And unfortunately with Joe's situation, they need to be on site. So that changes that dynamic, but how can they use the use of technology, and how do we incorporate that in as we move forward? And also I'll say from a lease standpoint, from an industrial or commercial real estate perspective, I think we're seeing an interesting dynamic. In some cases, I think you'll see a downsizing of leased office space, particularly because of the remote work. But at the same time, I think you'll see the increase in small offices and the ability to have small fluid offices increase. And we're seeing that to some extent with the real estate that we own.
Thanks, Amy. Stephanie, you want to jump in?
Sure. So pre-pandemic, Geisinger had a pretty robust continuity of operations plan. And part of that was work from home. Do we have staff that have the ability to work from home? Because obviously not everybody is at the bedside. We still have finance staff, HR staff, all those different staff that work in office buildings. So we did send the majority, if not all of them, home to work. We increased what our plan said, which is about 10% of our staff had the ability to work from home, to almost 50% of our staff had the ability to work from home. It required us to get a lot of IT equipment quickly, source it very fast, get it out to people, and make sure that they have the correct connectivity to do the work efficiently. And I think we don't want to waste that opportunity that we have. We are now looking into plans to construct hoteling type spaces for our employees. So on days that they do need to come into the office, instead of a dedicated office that's theirs, that they only come into a couple times a month, we have rentable hoteling offices that people can take their laptop from home for a day, go into the office, do their meetings, and then take the rest of the day from an office that they're utilizing for the day. So that's kind of our new structure, what we're looking to have going forward. We've sent a lot of people home, and I think that's just part of what's going to have to be written into our business continuity plan going forward.
Thanks, Stephanie. Marwan, you want to give some thoughts on how Penn State's going to be moving forward with this?
Sure. In March, when we had to switch to remote completely overnight, a lot of us were skeptical whether it could be done or not. Like what Katie mentioned, how do you do chemistry lab or biology or geology and so forth? And we found that it could be done. I think the challenge we are going to have when we return to normal, whatever normal is going to be, we're discovering that some functions, just like Stephanie mentioned, may not have to be on campus every day. It could be every 2 days or 3 days. So, but we value our campus here in our community, the personal interaction. To my surprise, that my board meetings, for example, were at an extremely high rate of attendance with remote compared to the in-person. In spite of that, I think you would find that a lot of people say, look, we miss the face-to-face interactions. We used to provide nice dinners, so people miss the food because we don't have to do that anymore. So in spite of the cost savings, I think we're discovering the value of building relations face-to-face and socialization. The same thing with the students. Students were very supportive, very understanding, although they disliked the remote experience because they decided to be on our campus because of the personal and social transformative experiences that they could have. So it'll be an interesting, I think, return to normality in terms of flexibility, adaptability to the new realities. If you ask me, could we have done this 3 years ago? I would have said absolutely not. Then we discovered how wrong we were when it comes to the effectiveness of using remote teaching and learning. So it'll be, I think, also a challenge emotionally and psychologically for some of the employees who might still continue to feel vulnerable and concerned because of either their own health conditions or their family and loved ones so there's a fear factor, a genuine fear factor that we have to somehow take into account as we transition back. For example, we decided to go back in terms of the classes that are to be delivered face-to-face on the 15th. So we have mixed modes. We have 100% online, asynchronous, synchronous, remote, and then face-to-face. Sorry, my phone is reminding me. So it's again a new experience also for us employers, and real estate is expensive. So I think this is an opportunity for us to assess, okay, we don't really have to have that many offices, which tends to be a challenge for us with offices for faculty or staff. So I think it was a painful, but I think an eye-opening experience for all of us in terms of adapting to the new reality.
Thanks, Marwan. I think that comment is 100% correct. Eye-opening, to say the least, and transformative at a minimum. Carol, you want to jump in on this one?
So we had to put more technology across the whole organization because we know we always had a challenge with geography because we have multiple buildings, multiple sites. So to build that team effort, we would bring everyone together from the different sites, and we always felt that that was necessary. But I think we found that putting the technology out at all levels of the organization, we were able to be efficient in team meetings and trainings. Instead of bringing employees to a centralized training site, we put training rooms and all the technology there so they can train in those buildings. But for us, our customer service department doesn't like the remote though, because it seems to extend their work days, because customers who are working remotely send emails and requests all times of day and night instead of during the normal working hours. So they're hoping everybody gets back to the desk, but very similar to Joe's business. I mean, we're a hands-on service organization, so working remotely really was not an opportunity for us. You can't load, unload, and pick and fulfill orders remotely. So our entire team really maintained a presence in the office, even the back office, with the exception maybe of our sales director, but everyone else still came to show that leadership support, the facts over fear, and just to maintain that collaborative effort for everybody, throughout the organization. But we'll continue with some of the remote, and I think it could be efficient. And I do find that I attend more outside meetings remotely than in person. So there's a lot of pluses from it.
Thanks, Carol. Jim, you want to go next?
First of all, I'm glad that Joe rejoined our conversation because I wanted to thank him. I've gained about 25 pounds since the start of the pandemic because Garrity's hasn't stopped business. So all joking aside, obviously we've changed our priorities, I guess, about what is gratitude or what is a relief for you if you're a runner, if you're into the activity. I want to focus my thoughts on what we do and how it relates to the employees and the change throughout this thing. We are physical rehabilitation, period. We know that significant numbers, thousands of people that have survived this COVID virus, the COVID-19, that will need some form of rehabilitation. They're struggling at home, they're struggling in nursing homes, and certainly in all different settings. So regardless of age or challenge, we know that our services are needed now more than ever. And so what we've done, in addition to the fact that we realize also that our people, I think we hear this all the time when you talk to these significant thought providers in the country about our people are our greatest assets. It's probably even more prevalent now than ever if it wasn't. Our people that need to be in person with these sick and elderly in the nursing homes, to going into their homes and providing care. Our people are just unbelievable. But to that point, we did do some adjustments in terms of, we know people are struggling. So we introduced Therapy Your Way, which is a significant opportunity that you, the consumer, gets to decide how you receive therapy. I still believe there's nothing better than the human touch, and we believe our people have truly healing powers in all different settings. But for people that are resistant to going to a facility, we offer therapy, virtual therapy. Those that aren't formally homebound, so they can't receive home health legally therapy, we have offered Therapy Your Way, that we'll send a therapist who's screened to your home to help you recover from this terrible pandemic and the virus. So I look at the challenges that all revolve around. We realize every single person in our healthcare system is truly important. And that's why we continue to reinvest in our people. There are many that have chosen in getting through this pandemic, and maybe because of some of the virtual classes at Penn State and Johnson and other endeavors, have decided to continue to advance their careers. And we constantly reward and reinforce and reinvest in our people.
Thanks, Jim. Terry, you want to wrap up the first round on this before we throw it back to the group for additional comments?
Sure, thank you. So our organization has been working remotely since last March, it was a fairly smooth transition for us. We do have multiple offices and a lot of our work has historically been done on the road. So we have the systems in place to make it happen, but found that we had to make significant adjustments in two areas. One is how to handle our student internship program and create an experience for them that was just as robust as when we were face to face. And the other is our research methodology. And obviously you cannot sit down and conduct small focus groups or stakeholder interviews face to face. So we had to identify other means of gathering information, which we implemented through the summer and fall, and it was very successful. I think we'll, based on the current timeline that everybody is talking about regarding the vaccine, I think we'll remain totally remote probably till August, maybe September, and then potentially look at some sort of hybrid environment. And in our offices, both of them, you can't be socially distant, and I think some people are still going to be reticent when things are so-called like back to normal about being in that environment. So I think we have to look long term and say, okay, how can we make people feel comfortable about coming back? And from everything I've been reading is most sectors that can have remote workforces are finding that it is very positive for them, and they're going to continue that in a post-COVID world. And so I think it's going to become a competitive factor for businesses, and that if you do offer hybrid or remote work for certain occupations within your business, it's going to be a plus in attracting a workforce. We've also been reading up a lot about commercial real estate and office real estate, just like Amy has. And there are some projections that office space is going to continue to be in demand, because for the businesses that indicate they need to be face-to-face for creativity purposes and things like that, they're going to have to start expanding their footprint to make an environment that is more socially distant and comfortable for their workforce. So a lot of things are people are looking at future planning now, and workforce and workplace are going to change. I think it's going to put permanent changes in processes and protocols within offices and manufacturing and logistics environments, and even retail on a permanent basis. And I think we're going to see a lot of changes in urban and land use planning as a result of this as well, now that public health and population health are becoming more in the forefront as a result of COVID.
Thanks, Terry. I'll throw it back out to the group for additional feedback on the topic, or commentary on other people's thoughts.
I'll say one bit of feedback we've gotten from some of our employees, is that they appreciate the opportunity to work from home. But I also think it's difficult to disconnect that as well. So you're working in the same place in which you lay your head at night. So there's that, not opportunity per se. You're working longer hours, you're always available. Your desk is just right down the hall. So I think that's something that we also have to work through with our employees to make sure that they are having that good work-life balance.
And this is just a comment. I was passing by a car rental place where I used to rent a car every month to go to University Park. And their lot was at least 50% down in terms of the number of cars in their lot. Hotels, the impact on the entertainment industry. I think, yes, we are adapting. We have adapted, and will also adjust how we do business over the long run. But I think the concern that I have is the long-term impact on the affected businesses as a result of us modifying the way we conduct our business. I think it needs a collective thought process and strategy in order to help those restaurants, for example. I know a person, and I asked him how was he doing. He said 60% down in terms of sales as a restaurant. So we're all forced to rethink and do things. And yes, we want to be successful as organizations, but there are side effects as a result of the change that is taking place that will hurt many other individuals, small businesses. And I think, Terry's role And the Institute is really important in bringing us together to think collectively, collaboratively, so that we can, as a region, be successful in attracting, retaining talent, and provide a healthy economy for all to live and prosper.
All right.
So I'll say one more thing. I think Terry brought up the concept of hybrid. And I think as the next year progresses, we are going to be all in a hybrid workforce model. So we as a collective community need to support those most vulnerable, which is, retail and restaurants. And how do we get them up and running so that they can continue to increase revenues, such as adaptability to online sales. So yes, rising tides lift all boats.
All right, well, we'll move on to the last question then. Obviously, as we've all discussed, no business or industry has been untouched by this in lots of different ways. So what lessons have you all taken from the situation, and what decisions will you make going forward to affect your organizations and companies? Carol, you want to jump in on this one for the first one?
Sure. Thank you. You're right. No industry or business was untouched. There has been disruption in every single sector, and some of that disruption has been positive. We've certainly seen some types of businesses in our region experience growth, while others have suffered. And I think we've also noted that businesses that were able to innovate and adapt how they work started to see some improvement. And I think that's one of the lessons that we as the Institute is we adapted, we innovated in how we conducted our internships and how we collected data. And especially since the data collection was very successful for several of our projects, I think those are things that we will continue to do. Every meeting that we had organizationally was virtual. And while we, like Marwan, experienced better attendance, I think that's something we all need to consider going forward, is that we need to be more respectful and sensitive to individuals as well as our team members in offering alternatives. Maybe not understanding the motivation, but just being more sensitive in how we do business and making sure those virtual options are available, because COVID has affected some individuals more than others, and they are going to be reticent about going into a conference room with 10 to 15 people for an hour-long meeting. And some people it's not going to bother. So I think we all need to look at our own processes and protocols and have that sensitivity. I think we all need to continue to innovate, and especially for the smaller businesses in our community, COVID really pointed out the disparities of businesses, where you could see two small retailers and one immediately had connections to help them get an online platform to conduct sales, but a like business down the street didn't know what to do. So I think that we need to ensure that the resources we have through our economic development providers and local governments recognize that we need to create a more conducive environment to support our more vulnerable businesses, regardless of whether they're small, medium, or large, to help ensure that they can innovate and transition to be successful going forward.
Thanks, Eric. Carol, you want to go next?
Just to continue a little bit on what Terry said with those businesses being able to put the online platforms. I mean, we saw that across all of our customers on the different channels that they would use to distribute, and many of them quickly brought on an online presence that they were able to do, whether it was business to consumer or business to business, but through an online platform, which of course put more stress on our organization because it required more resources. But and I think you'll see those companies maintain those channels and grow them, they'll keep those different platforms. But for us, I think one of the biggest lessons learned was how each of us impacts the other, whether at work or people coming in. So we'll continue to invest in the safety and security measures, with the increased cleaning, the common area management, the shared surfaces. Many employees are committed and dedicated. So when they don't feel well, they come to work. We're going to stick with, if you're sick, please stay home. We're going to, keep an emphasis on those items. But it's really just the speed that we did and increasing those procedures, protecting our warehouse people from people coming in over the road and protecting those from over the road from our warehouse. So, limiting office visits. And as Terry said, people are going to be cautious coming into a smaller meeting room. So we'll probably have to expand those and take a different look at how we do that. But it's just the safety, security focus and just staying with it.
Thanks, Carol. Marwan, want to go next?
Well, unknown to us, to be honest with you, 2 years before the pandemic hit us, we started a certificate program for faculty and staff, training them to use technology. And it turned out to be the most effective, wonderful thing that we have ever done, because overnight we switched, no hiccups. I think the point, and I think Stephanie mentioned this, that having a viable, known business continuity plan is critical. Just like fire drills, you have to know what to do in case of a short notice of an emergency. I think business continuity plan is one thing that is very, very valuable for us and any organization, what to do in case a situation calls for it. I think that's the biggest lesson I think we have learned that helped us navigate, continue to provide quality services and retain our students and faculty and staff as well. So I'll stop here.
Jim, could I jump in? Okay, so a couple things I think that we've learned and that I really do hope that we continue in the next year and then onward is we've implemented a lot of AI and automation at Geisinger over the past year. So some examples of automation, we have an employee health department that was small, probably 20 employees. Now we're managing 27,000 employees on a different scale than we ever have before. We implemented bots that actually spoke to our employees to be able to do health screenings, the daily health screenings, and then also bots that were patient facing so that when patients went to our website, they could interact and figure out what types of services we had to offer them for their specific need. Same thing with COVID testing, obviously now the vaccine. I would also say patient test results. So typically our patients get a call from their providers or they utilize the MyChart at Geisinger, and we actually were able to very quickly automate test result reporting to our patients in a secure manner. So all things that we've implemented, I think they benefited our patients, certainly benefited our employees. I know that we'll continue with them.
Thanks, Stephanie. Amy, you want to go next?
Sure. So from a Chamber of Commerce standpoint, I think we've learned a lot of lessons, but we always go back to our core mission. We're a 152-year-old organization that's been serving the business community of Northeastern Pennsylvania and Lackawanna County to do basically to protect and support and grow our business community. That mission did not change and it will not change as we move forward, but how we do that and how we bring programming to the community and support has changed. And I said it earlier, technology is at the forefront of that. We've realized that we need to provide technical support. We've realized that increased capital to small business funding is going to be needed, and we're going to have to do things in a different way. The Chamber of Commerce is going to have to adapt to meet the needs of the business community real time today. And what does that mean? Is it the way of educational programming? Is it the way of networking virtually and the use of online platforms while preserving the traditions of our past and our core mission? It's how we're going to find that healthy balance to be able to network in person, and how do we continue to meet the needs of those that do not want to come back into a face-to-face environment. I think technology is going to be at the core of that. And then I think we'll also continue to serve as a resource for the community, not only the business community, but the residents in general, to ensure public safety and to encourage all of the business community to follow the guidelines of the CDC so that we can get back to our new normal and evolve as we grow and move forward.
Thanks, Amy. Joe, you want to jump in?
So the lesson we learned in our industry was how important and essential we are. I think, over the course of the last several decades, retail has become, less of a glamorous job to people. And I think, this whole pandemic has brought a new sense of pride to our industry that, the community and our workers realize how important we are. We all became essential we had several employees in one of our departments in one of our stores a few months ago. There was 3 or 4 people that all got COVID all at one time. And, we put in place all of our procedures to make sure that everything was safe up front. And then we went in, we did additional cleaning, but we also contacted the Department of Health and talked to them just to make sure we were covering all our bases. We even asked, do we need to shut this department down? Is there anything else we need to do? And she said, oh no, you're critical infrastructure. You guys can't shut down. You have to continue operating. So I like that way better than essential. I think critical infrastructure sounds even more important. But, when this all first started, the fear that grew from our customers and also from our workers, that was the thing that scared me the most. I walked into one of our stores right after everything hit the fan and the stores were just wiped out and we were finally kind of starting to rebound. We were finally getting meat back in our cases. And one of our bakery managers said, "Are you scared?" And I said, "I'm only scared if you stop showing up to work. If the food workers of this country didn't keep going to work, harvesting, processing, distributing, transporting, and stocking, I think it would have fallen apart. I think it really hinged on the fact that the people in our industry continued to go to work. And that is the lesson that I want to carry forward. I want to make sure that, my job then was to make sure everybody felt safe in our stores so that the customers kept coming and they could feed themselves and that our workers kept coming so we could keep the shelves stocked. And the lesson learned is that we are important and we need to continue to make sure that our workers know that they are important and that they are appreciated. So that is one of my big focuses moving forward.
Thanks, Joe. Katie, you want to take this one?
Sure. I think the first lesson learned about higher ed in general is that we can pivot quickly. I think, there's this thought that higher ed as an industry, we're slow to change. We're slow to anticipate needs, and I think through the pandemic we proved that we can, and I think a lot of good is going to come out of that. I think continued collaboration, more collaboration, different types of collaboration, thinking about the way that we can piece higher ed together for more stackable credentials. So that's the first lesson learned that I think we're going to carry forward. The second thing for us at Johnson College, as I mentioned earlier, we were moving towards a hybrid model so that we could have more flexibility for staff and students in the first place. So I think the pandemic helped us move this forward quickly. It's seeing that students can take some classes online, but that we can also provide the hands-on education in different ways too, not just on our campus in our own labs, but out of different industry locations and in different ways. So I think for us too, another lesson learned was just, thinking about the concept of campus differently. As Marwan said, real estate's expensive. So how can we enhance the student experience while also thinking about that experience differently and delivering it differently. And then I think the third lesson learned is that it reinforced the importance of soft skills for students. So we are a technical college, and sometimes it's a little difficult to stress how important the soft skills are to employers when we talk with our students, and how important general education classes are as they complement some of the technical classes. But when we think about what we've talked about here and what has carried us forward as a community, it's been creative thinking, resourcefulness, resiliency, grit, things that Northeastern Pennsylvania has always been known for, and really great lessons that we can now draw upon. Remind our students like, hey, this was a real lesson learned. We've been saying to our students, we promise real world learning at Johnson College, and it doesn't get more real world than this. Not just learning the technical skills in different ways, but also those soft skills.
Thanks, Katie. Jim, you want to wrap this one up before we throw it back to the group?
Yes, thank you. Well, certainly we have discovered new ways to deliver services and use of teletherapy, especially for the most vulnerable pediatrics that cannot go without speech therapy for their continued advancement. Adults that are either very vulnerable at home and needed that teletherapy touch. I would say close remote monitoring of those with chronic illnesses. We have a significant number of people in our region that rely on us through palliative care and to prevent rehospitalization and ER visits that are unnecessary. And our palliative team and home health team are absolutely critical in that way. But it's so impossible to go through this whole thing without talking about the importance of people to people and communications. I think we all learned and we're hearing every day, Jim, in the media and everywhere about how people miss keeping in touch with their loved ones and the touch at the end of life. I don't understand. We have hospice team members that went into homes with COVID throughout the entire pandemic. You cannot replace that with technology. And so when I think about the heroes and the things that they've done, our ability to communicate with every population that we touch, with our employees, with caregivers, with the media, certainly with communicating with everything from the Department of Health that had challenged all healthcare systems and providers to family members that aren't able to see or talk with their loved ones. Our goal it has been and continues to be to improve and continue to improve the communications with all those populations because it's so easy to miss a step and have someone feel left out. And so those are some of the elements that we've learned from this prolonged pandemic.
Thanks, Jim. No, I think the one thing we've all learned is how essential all of our businesses are and how interconnected they are to one another's. I think I think many of us and people in the community have not thought about that at the level that they do right now. And I think this has been a transformative event that has allowed people to kind of open their eyes and see how interconnected we all are in so many ways. So, but I want to throw it back to the group for additional thoughts of yours to other commentary.
I have a comment to the credit of the mayor of Scranton. She gathers a group of people, different industries, to discuss issues as we speak now, as it pertains to COVID-19, what's being done and measures to be taken to help us all overcome that. And Dr. Stephen Scheiman, the medical school here in town, also does get leaders of regional institutions of higher learning, and we have been learning from one another as far as pre-testing, contact tracing, and what have you. When are you coming back, in person or not, and so forth. That brings to my mind what I think Terry mentioned earlier: regionalism. And I've been pushing for this for some time, to get together and look at our region collectively as institutions, whether it is healthcare or institutions of higher learning or food industry, doesn't matter. What should we be doing together to really advance our region? I hope that the aftermath of this horrible experience, that we can learn something positive from that, so that we can really care for each other's well-being. All of us want to be successful in our own ways in our businesses, but in the final analysis, we all in some way, shape, or form, we touch people's lives. And I think we are much better off working together than competing against one another. Thank you.
Any other final thoughts from the group on this topic? Or any of the topics as we move this to wrap this up? Please share anything else you have. All right, well, with that, I want to thank you all for participating, on behalf of Times-Shamrock Communication, on behalf of my team. Again, thank you all for sharing your thoughts and feedback on this. This has really been outstanding.